Good evening and welcome to Face to Face. I'm Niresh Eliathambi. A lot of things are happening these days with the judiciary and with Parliament and the President seemingly locking horns with each other. And to discuss this and many other matters in our beloved country is Mr. Kesaralal Gunasekara, former Member of Parliament representing the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, who has been in politics since 1978. Welcome, Mr. Gunasekara.
Welcome, Niresh.
So, what's your opinion of what's been going on in this seemingly a fracas between the three branches of government?
Yeah, the question is, I think this stems from the fact of a statement made by His Excellency the President in Parliament with regard to a Supreme Court determination that was referred to him and the Speaker. And based on that determination, he made statements to say, look here, the Supreme Court is fundamentally invading the territory of the legislature. Now,
but isn't it the duty and the responsibility of the Supreme Court to take up these matters?
Is actually the Supreme Court is there for that. Supposing there is a bill which is to be debated, and if it is referred to the Supreme Court, or if people challenge after the bill is gazetted in the Supreme Court, then until the determination is sent back to Parliament, you can't even talk about it. It's so powerful because we need to understand that these three institutions, these three sacred institutions, must act in a manner which does not create problems for each other. That is very essential. The judiciary, the executive and the legislature, they must act in unison fundamentally. If they don't do that, they run into various problems. So this could be, and even some of the statements that are made in Parliament, which I felt was not called for.
Now, Mr. Gunasekara, this very morning, the Judicial Services Association issued a press release on this very matter, stating that there are certain parties who are attempting to discredit impartial judges. So, for the JSA, the Judicial Services Association, to come out with such a public statement, it points to a real problem in governance, isn't it?
Exactly, because now there will be several organizations or associations coming up and making statements. This is not something that you should promote. We need to understand that we must always ensure that contradictions don't surface in this manner. If you cannot operate in such a way, you'll be calling for problems, because now when the Judicial Services Commission, or whatever the association or judicial association comes out with statements, there will be counter statements as well. It will go on and on. So this is it's fundamentally very wrong to create a scenario of this nature. There is always a possibility that there could be problems, but you need to decide as to how you deal with such issues if by chance such problems occur. That's a different process, that's a different way, that's a different method. It should never come into the public in this manner. It should not become public in this manner.
Now, there was even a suggestion that a parliamentary select committee should be appointed to inquire into a decision, a judgment rendered by the Supreme Court. This is unheard of in most democracies. Is this even legal?
Well, the Parliament has a right to appoint select committees. That I accept, concur, that the Parliament has a right. But the question here is the determination which is required by law has been sent by the Supreme Court. Parliament needs to understand that they have to accept the determination, number one. If they feel that there are certain issues that have to be looked into, yes, well and good, they can look into it. But the suggestion to appoint a select committee in relation to that determination is a serious statement, is a very serious statement.
Now, all this is happening, Mr. Gunasekara, in the backdrop of the looming presidential election. Do you think that has any bearing on this situation?
Well, there could be so many maneuverings that are going on. We do not know because so far, actually to be very frank, people are not aware as to whether the presidential election will be held or not even. That talk is there.
Well, the Constitution demands it.
The Constitution demands it, but people are still having thoughts about as to whether ultimately we will have a presidential election or not. So, in that backdrop, whenever statements are made of this nature, and mind you, it's the end of the time of the presidential rule. Presidential rule is coming to an end in a couple of months' time. And in that backdrop, people will be more interested in having an election and appointing their president. So, we must ensure that we work towards that.
This is, after all, Gotabaya Rajapaksa's term.
The balanced term.
The balanced term which is being filled by President Ranil Wickremesinghe, and the term runs out at the end of this year.
Correct.
In
October.
In October. So, clearly there needs to be an election. There is no precedent set for where you could simply go on, except of course, unless of course through a referendum such as what Mr. J.R. Jayawardena, the president at the time, carried out back in 1982.
Together with the constitutional amendment.
Yes, but of course none of that appears possible right now.
It's a time factor.
Yes,
a time factor.
It is. We are, I believe, less than 4 months away from an election. This being June, and in October we need to have that election, September or October. And the Elections Commission has come out and
already announced the probable dates of during which period that the election will be held.
Absolutely. Now, if the presidential election is postponed, it would be the latest in a series of elections which have been postponed. The first, I believe, was the provincial council election, which I can't even remember the last time we had one. I think it was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And of course, then we have the local government elections, which the nominations were actually called, and hundreds of millions of rupees were spent on it, which the country can ill afford, and then the election was simply not held, and that those nominations are still valid, by the way. So, we are still in that election process, and now of course, there is the presidential election, which is as you say, up in the air. So, that's very bad for democracy, wouldn't you say?
Correct. Very bad for democracy, because everybody, whoever who has intention of coming forward, or whoever who wants to contest, must declare, okay, I am coming forward, elections will be held during the correct period, that's all. Then everybody is happy, and then you move towards a campaign. You have a smooth campaign and then have the elections.
But the campaigns have already started.
To some degree, by certain parties.
Yes.
Who have already announced their candidature.
Absolutely.
The parties.
Several major parties and also several minor parties have announced their candidates. And it's a question of whether the current president, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, would also be running. And of course, whether the SLPP would field a candidate, and what is becoming of the SLFP. Perhaps you could enlighten us a little bit about the SLFP.
I think the president fundamentally, with not exactly, but I don't think he exactly said it, but I feel that what he meant was that he would be contesting. That's what I felt. And it all depends as to whether the SAPP is coming forward with their candidate or not.
Now, all this again takes place at a time when Sri Lanka is struggling to get out of this bankruptcy situation which we have had for more than 2 years now. Where are we heading, Mr. Gunasekara? Are we getting out of the woods yet?
Effects of the bankruptcy is still felt. You know, the cost of essential commodities are still the same. I mean, rice, which was 80, 90, is 250. Diesel, which was 100 odd, is 300 odd. So those things are not come. Those things have not come down at all. Those changes have not taken place, and the salaries remain the same. No wonder the people are getting onto the streets asking for salary increases, because we need to understand that the cost of living is sky high. See, in that backdrop, how does an average man survive? How does he maintain a family? Those are large issues. Those are very
fundamental issues.
Very fundamental issues, and the rulers, parliament, etc., has to understand that these are matters that they have to go into, look into, what sort of remedies that they can provide.
Do you believe that the rulers, as you call them, but I prefer to call them the politicians who are in office rather than rulers, these politicians who are in office, do you believe that they are paying enough attention to the problems of the people?
No, I don't think so, because if you analyze the proceedings, whatever the politicians do, don't forget one thing: it is reflected in parliament. It has to be reflected in parliament. Very recently, I saw a clip where a certain bill that was taken up for debate, the second reading or whatever it is, there was a vote requested for, and the number who voted is 10, 15, 11 or something like that. In total, it was 25. This is out of 225 members of parliament. Just imagine, whatever the proposal was, whether it is defeated or won, number of members sitting and deciding is 25. 15 or a number was against it or supported it, and the balance and 2 or 3 abstentions. I mean, where have we gone?
So that's just
we have a serious situation. Parliament is an institution where you are supposed to be in parliament on parliamentary days. You can't be going out. But half the time, members of parliament are not there. You watch the proceedings, half the people are not there. So how can they conduct affairs? They need to debate. They need to debate issues. In order to debate issues, you must be in parliament. You must be present. When we were in parliament, we were in parliament. We didn't go anywhere else. Parliamentary days, we were there. What has happened?
And that's what they were elected for.
They are elected for that.
And they collect a salary.
Exactly. I always say, members of parliament, their role is parliament, not anywhere else. Don't ever think that members of parliament should be anywhere else. Parliament. Everything that they have to do is in parliament.
And
many people make this mistake that parliamentarians have various roles to play. No, their role is parliament.
But also, Mr. Gunasekara, our parliamentarians are hardly to be found in their own electorate. Yeah. Once they get elected, they come to Colombo.
Correct.
So they are not in the electorates, they are not in parliament. Where in the world are they?
They are in, most of these parliamentarians, even ministers. Now, we take the case of Mr. Athurat Mudali. When parliament does not sit, those days he's in the ministry. He's not anywhere else. He's in the ministry. And when parliament sits, he's in parliament. Do you find that today? 60% of the ministers don't come to the ministry even three days a week. Some of them only come once a week. Can you run a ministry in that manner? You can't. How do these people realize that they are doing damage to the country? They are supposed to do their work by the people. They were elected by the people, so work by the people. How do you do that? If you are a minister, you be in the ministry, attend to those affairs. And when it's on parliamentary days, you come to parliament and attend to those affairs. That's what other countries do. Huh? When we go to other countries, we are shown those things. How members of parliament get involved in parliamentary affairs. They come at 8 or 8:30 until 4:35 they are in parliament. They can't go out. They can't go and visit other places. What rubbish.
So, is it a problem of the party leaders not pulling up their members for
Party leaders, the leader of the house. I mean, I told you, I gave you statistics. I will give you the exact date, the number, all those things, less than 25. Sitting and judging on a particular act as to whether certain clauses should be amended or not, and taking a vote, 25 people participating in a vote.
That's
where in the world?
1 out of 9, because we have 225
25.
MPs. So, that's quite pitiful.
And mind you, these, who takes them up? Who pulls them up? Nobody pulls them up. The president doesn't. The prime minister doesn't. The leader of the house doesn't. The speaker doesn't. Then you have a lot of time.
So, if the ministers are not in the ministries and MPs are not in parliament, who's running the country?
That's why the country is suffering. That is the reason why the country is suffering. There are so many things that parliamentarians and ministers can do, but they are not up to that. It's so sad now, so sad.
So, what's the solution to this? How do you get members of parliament to come to parliament?
Well, the solution is party leaders have to decide on these things. Speaker has to decide on certain things. He has to be tough on a member of the parliament. Either you come to parliament or you leave and go, that's all. I mean, he's a custodian. He's the main custodian of parliament. Huh? If he doesn't do that, we have a serious problem. And I think the parliamentary staff, the secretariat itself, there are so many shortcomings the way I see. The parliamentary staff, the secretariat staff also has to be very tough on members of parliament, ministers, everybody. Do your role. How do you get them to do their role? Nobody is bothered, no? There is nobody to check on them as to whether they are carrying out their functions in parliament. Nobody. If you are absent at a committee meeting, you must be pulled up now.
But does this mean that parliament and also to a great extent cabinet, are they mere rubber stamps?
Fundamentally, they have become rubber stamps. Even take the case of cabinet. You think decisions taken at cabinet have gone through many minds, gone through various processes? Are you mad? No. 2-3 people decide, okay, fine, fantastic, let's go. That is why some of the cabinet decisions are wrong, erroneous. That's why they run into problems. You see, this VFS case, very recently, you saw, no? So many things, it had gone before cabinet, it was reported in parliament, all those things, nobody saw through it. I mean, that was absolute rubbish, no? Why do you want to have any of those elaborate programs when the department can do all those things and save money for the country?
And nobody seemed to know about it until it was actually implemented.
And there was a whistleblower. It's thanks to him that the entire country got to know that there is an operation going on where certain company has been taken in and they are being paid a amount. Of course, it is not armed, but still it is money coming to us that is being siphoned off. And you think anybody has taken any action? I don't think anybody has taken any action on those things. And that guy, that's a whistleblower, according to me. You punish a whistleblower, you take him to court. You take him to before the police station and record his statement. What for? He has every right he has every right to object.
So, has it come down to that? Members of the public have to be the whistleblowers? It's not happening anywhere else?
That is exactly what is happening in the present day context.
But
Very soon, don't forget, very soon people will start manhandling politicians. Because we are fundamentally moving towards that. You perform your task. If you perform your role properly, nobody is going to object now. Nobody is going to criticize you. Nobody will come after you. What rubbish. You do your job, everything is hunky dory. The country prospers. The country moves forward.
But what is the role of the civil service in all of this?
The civil society, you mean?
Well, the 1.7 million government servants.
This is another problem. Don't ever, I always say this, there are so many allegations against politicians, ministers, deputy ministers, everybody know. Nobody can ever carry out illegal functions without the help, assistance of the government officials. If there is corruption, then there is the involvement of the public sector as well. I don't say that a public sector consists of that. I don't say that. There are thousands and thousands of honest officers in this country. But if there is corruption taking place, it is with the assistance of the bureaucracy that can be done. No minister can do anything without the assistance of the bureaucracy.
Well,
anything wrong.
That explains why the bureaucracy has not been trimmed down. It is exactly the same size as that it was several years ago.
No, there is another aspect, there is another reason also, Niresh. The backbone of the bureaucracy has been broken, Those days we had civil servants who were top class. They were above the ministers also. And that is why functions were very smooth. Nobody was there to question any of those things. Today it's not that. Today the minister comes in and he says, look here, I want the secretary out. It is done now. It is done.
It's a pitiful state of affairs.
Very pitiful state of affairs.
But
I mean, he comes in and says, I don't want to work with this secretary. Yes, he removed.
And
Where have we gone?
of course, that leads back to the executive presidency.
Yeah.
Because the executive president has the powers and exercises the powers to appoint all ministry secretaries.
Exactly. See, the executive is also doing all those things. The young MP, ratata. That's all that I can say. No, we have gone down rapidly. There are honest officers. There are honest officers. There are clean officers, I must say that. I have come across many. And people who do their job properly. But the attraction to do the wrong thing is there, prevalent all over. That's why corruption is rampant. Although we say that there is less corruption, not nonsense. I feel corruption is more. Because the quantum of money that is spent by the government is huge. So there ought to be corruption.
Almost all of our tax money seems to be going just to pay the salaries and also into the corruption basket.
Exactly. That's what is happening. Nobody, they tell me after this bankruptcy issue, anybody cut down on costs? The ministry costs, departmental costs, companies, all those things, cut down on costs. Have they done that? No. Wastage is rampant. With the bankruptcy, there were so many new things that could have been brought in by Parliament or whoever was in power as changes, so that we could move forward correctly. Today, none of those things are happening. What rubbish. We just move on. Everything is hunky-dory. We managed to squeeze out money by increasing taxes from 18 to 36. And we got those money, we are very happy. We always say that the tax net has to be widened. The Inland Revenue Department is unable to do that. They are going after the existing taxpayers. That's all. That's all. If get everybody roped in, legitimate manner, ask them to provide assessments, you pay your taxes, that's it, you get more money. But the majority is avoiding. Huh?
But what's the reason that the majority of citizens avoid paying taxes? Is it because they don't believe they get a fair deal out of their tax money?
No, the natural tendency is to ensure that you pay the lowest amount of tax. That's the natural. Anybody would prefer to pay the lowest amount. There is nobody who says, look, I have to pay my taxes. There are certain people, but technically what I say is that. So it is left for the Inland Revenue to say, go submit your assessments and pay your taxes. That's all. And you can't be hiding. You know, there are so many processes you can find out. The banks can provide information. The banks can provide information now. There were so many proposals brought in. E-commerce, what happened?
Well, e-commerce doesn't seem to get very far in Sri Lanka, even though the current president has been focusing on it.
Yeah, we're talking about
nothing much seems to happen.
Nothing much. And payments through banks, etc., without the usage of cash. Move out, because this is where corruption takes place. If you can't bring in those changes, you are in trouble. The country is in trouble.
But many major government services are still back in the Stone Age. You take the railways, for example.
Yeah.
You still have to go over there to that counter. There's this tiny window with the bars, and you have to give your cash. And I mean, you can't pay by credit card there. I don't know whether you can pay by credit card if it's long distance, but
certainly
it's still
not,
the same thing. You still get that stub of a ticket, which if you lose it on the way, you're in trouble. So you have to take good care of it, because they're going to check you
at the next,
when you're leaving the destination station. So nothing seems to have changed.
Correct. No, the question is, I feel that the pressure by the civil society on the rail sector also has not come in, because if everybody started using the railways, then there would have been pressure, and the government would have been, all successive government would have been pressurized to invest in railways. But that did not happen. People they own bicycles, trishaws, cars, scooters, everything. You have your own mode of transport. In all other countries, it's not so. You go to work by train or bus. But in our country, 50% goes by train and bus, the balance 50% goes by their own mode of transport. So as a result, the train system suffers. I still feel, if I say this openly, people might attack me also, blab me. I feel the highway system was absolute failure, to be very frank, because it's a minor percentage that uses highways. Huh? If you had improved the railways right around the country, sent everywhere, many people would have benefited. Many people would have benefited. Highways, how many people use? I can't talk basic, because my own friends might criticize me and say, look here, why are you attacking the highways? But that is true, because the quantum of usage, quantum of people using the highway is very minute. We have to understand that. Why is it that we fail to understand that? Why? Because we are happy as long as our trip can be done in double quick time. We are happy. We are not worried about the other man who's struggling to get from A to B, point A to point B, and spends hours. We can go, so we are okay.
Well, that's an interesting thought, and I can't disagree with you on that. Yes, very few people actually use the highways because it's quite expensive as well.
It's quite expensive. So if that concentration went into the railways, that's it. I mean, our railway system in the 1950s was much more powerful than this. I'm telling you, the railway system in the 1950s was much more powerful than in the present day context. They were doing more miles in the 1950s. Will you believe? Those are the statistics. Huh? What has happened?
But
So
now
continuously.
we often have multiple ministers in charge
Yeah,
of any
yeah.
subject.
Yeah.
If you take railways, you have a minister of transport, a
What do you have?
minister of
Road-
railways,
yeah, highways, all various
railway
things.
development, highways,
Various
all
things.
that. But in the end, nothing much seems to have changed except
And
going
there
backwards.
There are several aspects. I feel that quantum of ministries should be less than 20. Max is 20. Yeah. All the others should get together and work. And the other thing is, everybody coming into power must understand you can't change the whole country in 5 years' time. Huh? You have a plan to work to the plan and get out, get the other person, the next person comes in, do the balance. Don't change everything. What is happening in our country is, when a ministry changes, everything changes. When a minister changes, everything changes. Can you develop a country like that? Is there anybody looking into it and find out why the hell are you not following what was done in previously? Does anybody ask questions? No. Why? Because what I want, I have to do. So every government needs to understand within a 5 years, what can you achieve in 5 years' time? So do a portion of the plan that is already in, or you have a plan, you establish a plan and you work accordingly. You may do only 20%, but that's good enough. And the next party that comes in, carry out the balance. That's how we develop, ma. That's how we move forward. Here, a minister changes, and in the same year sometimes, he changes everything.
So there's no policy continuity at
There is
all.
no policy. There is no policy continuity at all. And sometimes there is no policy at all. Another issue.
Well, we seem to have a lot of policies on a lot of things, but they seem
but
to
irrelevant.
gather dust somewhere.
Correct.
We have national policy for this and that, but nothing much seems to work according to those policies.
Correct. And there is something else that I feel that we must create this situation where ministers have to regularly come before public and answer questions.
No.
That is something that has to be done, so that ministers are taken to task, deputy ministers are taken to task. Things like that must be introduced. That's how we can get them to work. Otherwise, there is nobody to tell them, look here, Puta, you are going on the wrong track. You are not going to achieve anything. Who is going to tell him? You think the cabinet decides on those? No, not what rubbish.
But how does a citizen even go and meet a minister?
Yeah, that itself is a problem. That itself is a problem. I always say, if many people are coming to the department on a daily basis, that means the department is not successful. The role, what you are expected to do, you are not performing. Because if people are not coming, that means you are doing your job properly. Yeah? If many people are coming to the bank on a daily basis, of course there could be various reasons that there is something wrong with the bank. Banks should function in such a way that people can get their things done while being at home. Those are the changes that banks have to undergo.
So government departments shouldn't be any different. In terms of automation in Sri Lanka, we simply have not gone forward.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to actually automate most processes.
There are experts, there are youngsters. Call them in, rope them in. They are people who can give wonderful solutions. You know, we need to understand that this country is for the younger generation now. Our time is finished. We have to quietly move out. People in the 70s must move out gradually and make room for the others. Let them come into the picture. What are we doing? We are still holding on and trying to do everything. Why?
So in that sense, would you propose that there be a mandatory retirement age for politicians?
I totally agree with you.
So
I totally agree with you.
Members of parliament?
Everybody, especially ministers and above. mandatory age limit, 70 or whatever it is. That has to come in. Why aren't we getting youngsters in? Why don't you rope them in? These are, there are top class youngsters. They have come out with fantastic solutions.
Now, when you say youngsters, you mean the 20, 25-year-olds.
Sometimes 30, 35 is also young.
Right.
40 is also young.
But it's more a matter of knowledge.
Yeah. The question is, we don't have a situation, we don't cultivate a situation where youngsters are attracted to come and assist. Youngsters are not called for, they are not being requested to come and help us out. I don't see any of those things happening. But youngsters come out with good ideas. They are people who can do wonderful things.
So,
get them to come and help, because governance is a complicated area of activity. I always say many of these politicians have never worked in a department, have never worked in a ministry, have never worked in a government-owned business undertaking, have never worked in a commission. So how do they know what governance is? They don't know. That's why they make mistakes on the way. I can tell you ministers and so many people who make mistakes. Why? Because they don't have experience. We are people who have gone through the whole mill. We have gone through that process. We can tell the minister, you're wrong. You can tell the prime minister, you're wrong. You can tell the president, you're wrong. Why? Because we have experience.
Now, Sri Lankans are looking toward the elections as a sort of a reset button.
Yeah.
As in your computer,
Correct.
something goes wrong.
Correct.
The ultimate thing is you hit the reset button and it boots up again, and hopefully it works and works better. Is that likely to happen this time if the elections are held? Or are we just going to switch parties, switch presidents, and go back to the same old thing?
No, there is something that I firmly believe. I feel we have gone too far with same systems and same type of people. We need a change. Now, there has to be a change. As to how the change is going to take place, it's not correct for me to say, but I think we need a change. We need that, because you know why? We have been having various types of systems over a period of 10, 15 years or 20 years. Those things need to change. Certain ministers have to step down and go home, take a retirement. That's it. They must understand those things. If you are going to fight and fight and fight till you die, you are not going to achieve anything. You are not going to achieve anything. It's time to think back. Yes, take a leave, 1 day's leave, and think back. Do I have to continue? Is my time up?
Somehow I don't think many of the 225 in Parliament would be doing that.
Yeah.
And also the issue that I see is that because there are no provincial councils and local government,
the pressure is too much.
There's so much more for Parliament and the Cabinet to do, but at the same time they don't feel the pressure from a younger generation of politicians coming up.
Yeah, because there is no way, there is no ladder, because the ladder has been removed completely. Provincial councils are not there, local authorities are not there. So, most of the ministers in the past came through that ladder process.
So they've come up through the ladder, they've climbed the ladder,
they climbed the ladder and then come into Parliament.
And then they've kicked the ladder out.
Now the ladder is totally removed. Provincial council, local authority, removed. So that's it. So we can enjoy. We can go on for another 25 years. That's it. That's a mentality. Where the hell do you think we are going now? Where do you think we are going? We have to understand that we establish things and move forward. Establish good things and move forward. So the others we can and follow. But if we give the wrong message to the society, look here, we stay on. We have to be there. Without us, nothing can happen. It's all nonsense, no? It's all nonsense.
And on that note, I'm afraid we are out of time. My thanks to Mr. Kesralal Gunasekara, former Member of Parliament. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us today.
It is a pleasure.
And thank you very much to you at home for watching us. Stay with us. The news is coming up next. Have a pleasant evening.